So we're going to get close to finishing this up. We have most of this painting blocked in. We'll look for opportunities just to elevate the painting today. We'll probably focus in on creating the illusion of detail in the background, in the bouquet of flowers and the reflections. Look to simplify the countertop surface, and maybe some stylized steam coming out of the coffee cup. So that's what we're going to be looking to do. Just going to make sure that my camera, which is my phone, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit and stabilize this just a little bit. So it might be a little jarring here for a moment. There you go. Okay. And if we're lucky, we'll finish this up today, but if we don't, it'll be by tomorrow. So this is the reference photo that I'm basing this off of. I shifted some things around and edited some things out. The goal here isn't photorealism. The goal here when I had started this painting was to have a nice painting that I wouldn't mind hanging on the wall that pushed color a little bit outside of reality, just a little bit. So anyway, this is live streaming my open studio session, early mornings. We took a break yesterday. We're getting right back on the horse. Not a lot of talking, not a lot of explaining during these sessions. So just some painting. You're welcome to come along. Appreciate you joining. Alright, so I'm going to get some cadmium red light on my palette, just a little bit. I'm going to get some titanium white on my palette, and a little bit of transparent orange oxide, which happens to be the dominant color in the underpainting, by the way. The little toning I did on this canvas. And I'm going to get a little bit of I have some warm white. Golden calls it Titan Buff, which is kind of like a warm white. I'm going to get some of that on my palette. And we're going to start with the flowers. So let's see, I'm going to go with my smaller round. Just get a little pool of my cad red light, my titanium white. A little bit of my warm white. And we're going to mix up a pink. And we'll leave it ribboned so it's not overmixed, so to speak. We'll start the application of some thicker paint and a color that's getting a little bit lighter. I'll continue to play with that a little bit. Just gonna a little bit of water. Oops. My cat yellow in there. Alright. Cat orange rather. Alright. At some point we're going to work in some cooler shades into this, but for now we're going to stay warm. It's a little bit more orange, a little bit more red. It's fine the longer we can stay, when we have a kind of a complex shape and color like this, the longer we can stay warm, the better off we generally will be. And when I say warm, I'm referring to color temperature. So more red, more yellow, less blue. Back up. Good morning. I'm not the best at managing comments. If you're in the Northeast here, hopefully you're staying safe with the snow today. Occasionally when I get a chance to kind of rinse off my palette and refresh my water here, because I'm painting with acrylics, I'll check in with my comments and try and respond, but feel free to write them if you're interested in doing so. Alright, so I'm going to get some cooler colors into those blooms. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and get a little bit of cerulean blue and some magenta on my palette. Mix in some warm white. And this pretty closely matches what a lot of these petals will look like, the ones that are in shadow. Which will generally be bottom left. The more dominant light source at this on this plane is coming from this direction. There's a sliding glass door where some of that light's kind of casting through. I get a little bit of a cooler version of this magenta. And we'll probably come back through once we get this close to where we need it to be right now, with quite a few highlights later on. Almost dry brushing and kind of suggestion of additional flowers in the background. Okay. We'll do that. We'll continue to do that. There were some, this bouquet is withered away and about half of it is gone now, but there was a mixture of pink and red tulips. And the way that the florist arranged it, which was kind of nice, when it was young, fresh, and they were standing up like this, like you see here, the red tulips were kind of pushed down a little bit lower, arranged a little bit lower. In the bouquet, kind of peeked through the stems, and the pink ones were cut a little bit taller and arranged a little bit taller. So we're going to go ahead and mix up some magenta and some of our cad red and transparent orange, and just fill in those areas with really just blobs of paint, suggesting that we can see some of those red blooms in the background, and we'll come back through and strengthen, the greenery there. And I like seeing that orange peek through. That's part of the color that I toned the canvas with, or the board rather. Howdy, thanks for joining. Welcome to my Open Studio live stream. I'm gonna look to make some progress with this painting today. Get it close to done. Okay, I'm gonna go into the background and use some of these same colors that I have on my palette. I'm gonna focus in on the magenta and cerulean blue, or cobalt blue rather, and just create some suggestions in the background here. Kind of suggesting that the lines in the cabinetry. Nothing too detailed or elaborate because we want it to stay in the background. See. Lighten it up a little bit and blue it up a little bit. We'll actually use this on some of the flowers too. Some really light bluish magenta. Shadow light. Light bouncing off of it. And even a little lighter for the for the flowers. And then quite a bit because I don't necessarily want that to stand out and be too distracting. So we're going to dull that out and blue that out through a couple of successive layers. Some of this color into the suggestion of some of the veins within the stone that's in this countertop. And definitely in the shadows. focus on, rinse out my brush a little bit and focus on using some of this blue and white. There we go. So this is mostly blue with a little bit of the magenta mixed in. And there's quite a bit of a strong kind of bluish, magenta-ish series of reflections in the crystal that I see in two areas, kind of this central part of this curve here up to the top, and then down here in this corner in the reference photo that I took. So I'm just going to suggest that. Kind of want to honor the fact that light is going to bounce all around, as it always does. Colorful reflected light. And then we'll get some of it the same bluish color suggesting some of the shadows that might be over here. Push this back a little bit. Dry brushing that in. I have very little paint on my brush, and my hope is just to cool off that area of background and with soft broken edges so it fades into the background. And I may very well, depending upon how this all plays out, just leave it just like that, but we shall see. All right. So I think what I'm going to do is, while I have these colors on here, I have warm white. Let's see how this reads, or something that Buff Golden calls it. Yeah, I'm going to get this into nice thick ribbons of paint here, and a bigger brush strokes in the foreground than in the background, kind of indicating the texture of the stone that makes up this countertop. And if you check out earlier sessions where I started out this painting, I was considering using a version of the reference photo where there was the vase was sitting on a napkin that had a checker pattern, which worked pretty well too, but after comparing the photos, I decided to go with this. now that I'm making my way through the session, I'll probably have at least one more session before this painting is done, because I'm feeling like I need to do quite a bit more work here, and I want to keep it loose and painterly, where you can see evidence of the brush strokes and the application of the paint. Kind of an impressionist style, so this takes work. So probably come back again tomorrow morning, roughly at the same time. All right, we'll move into pure white. Blue in there. So I'll mix together my warm white, my titanium white, and my magenta-ish blue. And I'll use that. I'll be a little bit more heavy-handed with some smaller strokes toward the back, closer to the backsplash. My intention there is to suggest perspective. As things go off into the distance, they get smaller. Some of this on the tiles and the backsplash as well. Don't want to overdo the detail. Just a little bit. I'll have to rinse off my palette and change things up a little bit, and I'll check comments, but for now I'll just keep working until I use up as much of this paint as possible. So if you're putting in some comments and have questions and I'm not addressing them, I'll do my best to, but in this open studio format, all I'm doing is inviting you in to kind of observe me working. I'm not the best at answering questions or comments, but occasionally I'll have the wherewithal to be able to do so, so just be patient with me. Take a step back. I think it's a little bit more work here, and I'm going to work on the greens and then the reflections in the vase for a little bit. I'll probably wrap up after that. Let me adjust my camera. I realize it's really, really crooked. There we go. It's a little bit not great still. There we go. Okay. Just a little bit more work with the colors that I have on the palette right now. Before I switch over to my greens. All right. What else can I do with these colors to kind of elevate the painting from where we're at right now? I think I could use some of the magenta or blue in a coffee mug. Oops. I'm going to switch to a flat brush. Back up to a little bit of a larger brush. I'm going to get some of this bluish magenta. And just soften this green a little bit. Just make some marks that are suggestive of the handmade clay object here. The patterns that you might find in it. There we go. Okay. And, you know, we might use that same technique for the wood. The wood has a finish on it, and occasionally the grains will pick up some light. And we don't want to overdo it. I'm just going to suggest that. There's colored light reflecting back from the flowers. Maybe it's coming from somewhere else. Okay, there we go. And then I have this white on here. Let's see how this reads. Okay. We're getting there. A little bit more work to do. Let's see. Just dragging the dry brush across. Get some light on it. Okay. All right. Now we'll dress that up a little bit. Okay. Take a look at my reference photo here, and I'll probably move on to my greens. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to come through with passages reinforcing the darker shadow patterns. I'll need more time to refine some of the shapes that the highlights are creating, and then put the finishing touches on those blooms. So definitely have another session. I won't be able to finish it today. So probably tomorrow at around 5. Let's see. I don't know what I can do. While I have the colors that I have on there, I'm gonna reinforce the coolness, the cool colors with the cast shadow. So there's multiple sources of light. One of the light sources is there's 2 lamps. There's a lamp on the counter over here, and then there's a sconce, and there's a window. So there are some cast shadows, and we're gonna use our larger round. It's to use some of this bluish magenta. If I can get some that's not too corrupted by white. And we're going to get that into these cast shadows while we have it. We want to use it. Don't want to waste paint if we could avoid that. All right, so I'm going to go wash out my palette a little bit, at least 3/4 of it here, and actually before I do that, I have all this white and all this red. I'm going to get, or orange I should say, and red. I'm going to get some nice thick passages of pink, pinkish orange, and so forth on these bulbs, because I don't want to waste that paint and I want to build some texture, especially there. I mean, these are the kind of point of interest here. So we want to make sure that we do everything we can to reinforce that and draw attention to them. So I'm going to build up some texture by layering some thicker paint. Get some orange in there, just a couple of strokes here and there. Warm them up, and then we'll get some of this magenta-ish color mixed in. That'll gray out a little bit, and some white. The sides there a little bit. And that one's not too smooth. There we go. Good. All right, used up some paint, built up some depth and texture. I can get a little bit more white on my brush here with some ribboned paint, and keep going. With that. A lot of people don't think about the ability to build up texture with acrylic paints, but you can. What I'm finding is quite a few brands do have available within their line of paints a thicker formula that they make available. So it almost feels buttery like oil paints. And I do have some of that on my palette, so Golden is the brand that I'm using. That makes some of the thicker mixtures available. So I'm just looking to build up some textures. I'll use this later when I put the highlights on. I'd reinforce the lowlights to help those pop and stand out a little bit more. Okay, so I've used as much of the paint as I could on my palette. I'm going to start working on my blues and greens within the bouquet, the greenery. So I'm going to step away and I'll be right back. If technology cooperates, I'll take a quick peek at my comments as well. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your patience. Be right back. So we are going to get some blues and greens and yellows on here on my palette. I'm back. Kind of like where this is headed still. You know, it's kind of also in this awkward phase where I've spent enough time with it where I'm not sure if I like it anymore. Every painting has some version of that. Just about every painting. All right. Yeah, we really need to work on those greens. I mean, they're pretty good as they are. Like if I were to leave everything as it is, I'd be okay with framing this and hanging it on my wall, but there's some opportunities though to kind of advance the painting and elevate it a little bit more, so we're gonna do that as best we can. A little bit of, let's see, I'm gonna get some of this water off of my palette. A little bit of Prussian blue. Another blob of cobalt blue. A little bit of phthalo green. Yellow is what they call it, so I guess it's a little warmer version of phthalo green. And then I get what was the equivalent of kind of a cadmium yellow light. Get quite a bit of that. Okay. And some titanium white. Okay. So that's what I'm working with here. And I'm going to start, I have some pretty good darks and cool greens in there, so I'm going to start with my own mixture of green, which is going to be a little warmer. I'm actually going to work backwards. So I kind of have like this plant green. I'll try and work that in and see what kind of an impact that has on the painting when we start working in some of these warmer yellowy greens. Angle this a little bit. There we go. All right, feeling pretty good so far. We don't want to render, we want to suggest. So we're not looking for pinpoint accuracy. We're not looking for perfectly rendered detail. not looking for flawless. A flawless likeness. Now, keep going with this. Thicker passages of green, suggesting kind of those spiky leaves that you'll see. And we'll come back with some of my phthalo green and some blue. And get some of the cooler and some Prussian blue. Do the same thing in here. Now behind the reflected glass. We're going to have at least one area where we have some bent over, twisted leaves kind of popping out. Maybe one bent over that way. And then we're going to have this lighter yellow version of the green. Let's see. They're not all going to be pointing to the sky, right? All right. Maybe the last few here. Got a nice marbleized, partially mixed paint on the brush. Yeah. One of the negative impacts of drinking coffee is your handshakes. That's okay. All right. A little bit of my titanium white mixed in there. Down some texture. There. Kind of liking where that is right now, for now. And maybe I'll pick up some of that in there. Let's see. At least where there's suggestions of maybe some of the stems. Alright. And then maybe there's some of this green bouncing off of things and showing up in the shadows here. So let's see. Let's rinse this out. I'm going to reinforce some of the darker areas with my Prussian blue and phthalo green mixture. Take a step back. We're in a pretty good spot. I think we'll probably wrap up today's session here very shortly. I will kind of assess this from a couple different vantage points throughout the day and work out like a game plan for tomorrow, 2 or 3 things that I could do to elevate the painting, and we should be able to wrap it up. Inevitably there's some marks that just stand out in a negative way that I can correct. More conceptual ideas, whether it be pushing the background back by blurring it or cooling it off or things like that I can do. And then, I'll end with crisping up some of the highlights and the brightest of bright colors in the vase and bouquet of flowers and the supporting cast, which is this mug, and perhaps maybe a little bit of a stylized theme, steam marks kind of suggesting that. But for now, I'm going to leave it where it is. I don't think I can do much to elevate this painting. Probably just get some of this phthalo blue, more of it into the shadows and shadow patterns here, just because I have it on my palette. And I want to make sure I use it when it can be useful. And if I do kind of make a mistake and I'm a little too heavy-handed with it, I could always fix it pretty easily. I think we're in a good spot for now. I'll bring you around just so you can see from my point of view, kind of straight on, what this looks like, and then we'll sign off. So we're getting there, kind of a stylized impressionist style painting of this bouquet, which we've had on our counter for a while, since Valentine's Day. You can see starting to build up some textures with the intention of kind of helping the star of the show stand out. And that's this whole series of shapes here making up this vase and bouquet of tulips. And once again, we'll probably have, in addition to whatever other adjustments and final passages we have in our next session, after some thought and a couple of deep breaths, we'll probably have a little bit of a stylized kind of indication of the steam coming out of the coffee. There's things I like about this, which were kind of experimental on my part. The passages of dry brush over the dark of the kind of ribbons of color here, which is mostly a lighter magenta, lightened up by a little bit of cad red and a little bit of titanium white, kind of dry brushed over, kind of indicating the reflections off of the dark wood. I think that does a nice job of creating some interest and some color without distracting from what we have going on here. I mostly like the way the texture and the foliage is kind of worked out. There's some things I have to figure out how to fix. We'll refine these shadows quite a bit. We'll definitely refine some of the patterns of the veins within the stone on this countertop. We'll selectively cool off the backsplash, and we'll build up the texture, and then ultimately add the final highlights on the actual flowers themselves and the leaves and the foliage, and kind of refine the reflections, the jewel-like texture of the etched glass or crystal of this vase, and we'll be done. And we should be able to get that done next session, which will likely happen tomorrow morning with any bit of luck. So Jamie Turd Pencil and NYC, yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. I like the blue as well. It's kind of a mix of blue and magenta, and it reads pretty well. So appreciate that. Yep, definitely Impressionist, very Monet. Thank you. Yeah, the Impressionists are definitely probably the historical painters that most influence my aesthetic, or kind of where I'm aiming to head toward with my painting. So I appreciate that. All right, I hope you all have a wonderful day. If you're here in the Northeast, be safe with the snowstorm. Thanks for checking out my work. And if you have a lot of time on your hands, check out the other videos on the channel. A lot of time-lapse videos of portrait work and some hike and paint. The hike and paint playlist is quite interesting. That's where I kind of go out and take my camera with me on some hikes and paint on plein air. Those might be interesting on this cold winter day. If you're stuck inside and want to get outside but can't, there's an opportunity for you to take a little adventure with me. Again, that's on the hike and paint playlist under the video tab on my channel here, Paint and Draw with Tom. Thanks again. Take care. Have a good day.